What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. And guess what? We have another difference maker in the studio. This guest I'm super excited about. You know, I've had all kinds of different guests. My favorite guests are the guests that I've got to work with, and I got to work with Heather for about a year on a team that I called it was like the Traveling Wilburys. If you get that reference, it was like a super band, and I got to really get to know Heather and work with her closely. And it was super awesome. So I'm so excited to have Heather McGlone, president of ACE Strategies, in the studio today. Man, there's something else I was going to say. What was I going to say? Anyways, Heather, welcome to Coffee and Grit.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to finally have you in the studio. We talked about this
long
way
time.
back in January.
Yes.
When we were at the little retreat thing there.
Yeah. So this is the time. This is when I'm supposed to be here. So here we are.
That's exactly it. And that's what happens is like it just the timing, it just kind of lands.
Yeah.
So awesome. So excited to have you down. And you know, you, like I said, you're president of ACE Strategies. Tell me, how did you get started in your entrepreneurship journey?
It's interesting. Oh gosh, my kids are grown up now, but when my oldest was in first grade, so that would have been 18 or so years ago, I wanted to take my mom on a cruise when she retired, and I wanted to pay for it myself. And I was staying home with my kids and doing the mom thing. And so I ended up joining a direct sales company, and I went to a party someone was hosting, and the woman who was doing the party, I'm like, I could do that, you know?
Yeah,
So this started in that journey, and I won't go through all the stuff that happened, but the last company that I was with, I was very successful very quickly, started doing, training for them nationally, regionally, and locally, built a team, earned the trips, did all the cool stuff. And so there was that entrepreneurial piece in me that I didn't even know I had.
Yeah.
And developed the confidence where I used to be, never wanted to speak in front of people, all of that, but developed that out of need. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. I'm kind of good at this, And then fast forward, I went through a divorce about 12 years ago. And at that time, that direct sales industry was very unstable. It was difficult to say I'm a single mom and this is what I do, because you have no control over who's going to buy who's going to shut who down, all that jazz. So I worked with an Austrian company for a couple of years, helping them build an infrastructure here, and then decided to start, at that time, ACE and the whole branding. And my goal was to be a general contractor. That was about the time when social was becoming extremely relevant for businesses that had never done it before. They didn't know what to do. They were getting hit, 5 days from Sunday with every product idea. This is the best thing. And how do you sort through all that? Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I could be the sorter. I can be the general contractor and help figure out who needs what, and figured out really quickly that was an overwhing task. So
it sounds very overwhelming.
Over the years, kind of narrowed in, and, I'm self-learned. I skipped a spot in there between direct sales and launching ACE. I went, got my coaching certification, and I still wanted to be able to be home with my kids. That was the big thing. And I'd been out of the workforce for, 10, 12 years at that point. Who's going to hire me? Right. So I have a degree in psychology, thought, I'll be a coach. Well, I got about halfway through that program and thought, I'm really more of a consultant than a coach, because sometimes I just want to say the sky is blue instead of, let's talk about what color it might be, right? So I don't have enough patience.
Now what color do you see?
Exactly.
Still gray.
So fortunately today it's sunny in Michigan, but so I started a company for women in direct sales. I missed that because this is where, after a year and a half and a lot of my divorce settlement money, I'm like, I have no idea how to market or monetize. And so I thought, well, I better figure this out. And then that launched me into ACE, and now I'm a marketer. So that's what we do.
So you were problem solving for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Never thought of it that way.
Right? Like, yeah, you were going along, you figured out a problem that you were having, you had to market yourself, and then you were able to empower other women, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, and that now most of our clients, we've got a client in Australia, one in Canada. Everybody else is U.S., but they're spread out all over the place. And it was funny because I'm sure you can relate to this, but pre-pandemic, right? It was, oh, do you have an office somewhere? Well, I work out of my house. They're like, oh, you work out of your house, and now it's so cool to work out of your house. So we cut the cloth on that. So yeah, so it doesn't matter.
Like
now.
being the pioneer,
Yeah.
right? Like, did you use Zoom before the pandemic?
Yeah,
Yeah.
shocking, right? I mean, it existed before the pandemic.
It was, yeah. I discovered it the winter before the pandemic, and somebody was like invited me to a Zoom meeting. And the next day, I had a meeting scheduled in Ann Arbor, and it was super snowy. And I'm like, I don't want to drive to Ann Arbor. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's this Zoom thing? And I'm like, wait a minute, here's a Zoom link. Let's do this.
Well, I remember pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, how our world is now. But I got to the point where I didn't want to do phone calls with prospective clients or clients anymore because I liked seeing people, and people would just fight tooth and nail. I don't want to do that Zoom thing. I don't want to do that Zoom thing. And now, it's part of our fabric of life. So
it's funny how things come along and push people over the edge. I look at like texting, for example, because I was in the cellular world.
Yeah.
Texting was something that we tried to sell. Nobody could figure it out. Nobody wanted it. And then American Idol came along, and you had to text to vote. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted to text. And it just changed. Now, people don't want to talk on the phone.
Yeah, yeah, and QR codes. That's another one,
QR
right? Because
codes,
they were so not cool, and now all of a sudden they're everywhere again.
What made that cool though?
Because restaurants needed them during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
That's my theory, at least.
That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
I was going to say they are like everywhere now,
yeah.
because I mean everybody's trying to force QR codes down
Yeah.
everybody's throat, and they just were not picking up.
Yeah. So anyway,
It's crazy.
we
the different
sound like
things
old
that-
people.
I know we are. We're hip old people.
That's true. Okay, yeah, I'll take that. I'll own that.
What is it? Experienced, legendary. No.
Something. Yeah.
So we're at the journey. You had a problem. You figured out how to solve it, and then you're like, hey, I could probably help other people figure out how to solve that.
Yeah, and then you think about, and that's so I had mentioned right before we started, we're launching this DIY platform for solopreneurs who just need some help. They don't, because there's so much that you have to know, that you have to master, that you have to be good at to run a business. It's not like it used to be, or even like it was 5 years ago. It's just the faster technology advances, the harder it is to keep up on your day-to-day, let alone all the new cool stuff. And so I completely forgot your question, but I had a point that I was making. So everything that I've done has been self-learned, and so sharing the tips, the tricks, the techniques, the shortcuts. Because if you had to figure all this out yourself now, it would just be awful. And so I think my biggest piece of advice to folks who are starting a business is get a community of people around you who are really good at the stuff you don't do, and that you can pour into them and they can pour into you. And you don't have to pay everybody to do everything, but you just can't
do it
by yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I was running around trying to do this podcast by myself. It's like now it's just showing up here.
Yeah.
Right?
What an awesome thing this is.
Exactly. Exactly. You need other people. You need other resources to come along. You can't do it by yourself.
Right.
So is that transition, you said working with women and
so I was working with women, figured out, what, I have no idea what I'm doing, how to monetize. So I took I'm embarrassed to say now, but I signed up for an online LinkedIn class by a guy who, now that I know LinkedIn and do it well, and I'm not going to use his name because he's making a lot of money, God bless him, but I'm like,
I'll have to find out afterwards.
It really was kind of like, it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know all this stuff. Well, now that I've done it for so long, I'm like, yeah, his stuff was really whatever, fine.
Yeah.
But
it was the start, though,
it was
right?
the start,
Yeah.
right? And so over the years, we really honed in on that LinkedIn space with clients who are, a lot of times they're coaches, consultants, the EOS world, those types of folks, fractional sales, and now, thanks to the pandemic, that's still our our heart and soul client, and I love them because they're like us. They're the people that are doing life and doing business, and but we've also then had this opportunity to work with some different types of clients, some bigger clients, and now we're really going to hone in. This new DIY program is really specifically for those folks who either don't have they want to do it or they have to do it themselves, but then turn that into a community because it's lonely.
It is lonely.
Especially if you've never worked by yourself, it's lonely.
And are we talking
Yeah.
like creating content and like marketing yourself
Could,
or
that and how to do all that, but also have people in like you, right? And
Yeah.
you can do a little class on how to sell yourself without selling, and just all the stuff. I know so many amazing people who
Yeah.
just want to pour into others, and so
So
I'm
tell me about this, how you're doing
Yeah.
it.
so a lot of it's up here still. I'm still
Yeah.
trying to get it out, but the by fall I would like to launch the community piece of it. But one of the things I've done for the last 7 years is I've run a women's entrepreneurs conference locally here in the Metro Detroit area, and especially through that, but also through my networking, through my chamber, through the great people of the world. I know so many amazingly talented, gifted people
Yeah.
who have a heart and passion to help others. And so really I figured out, gosh, Josh, it's 24 years ago, I was put on this earth to build community. That is my purpose. And so everything I touch, that's the central piece of it. And so I'm thinking about how can you impact these folks that most people, as a marketer, I've always been told by my coaches, you want to just keep upping the ante with clients, charge more, get bigger clients, charge more, get bigger clients. And I get all that. But then who's helping the
Those
folks
people.
who are not there and
Exactly.
will never be there?
Exactly.
How can they get there if they don't have any help? So
Exactly.
so this is just my
That's my passion point
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
is those beginners, the solopreneurs, the people that are, even if they have a couple of employees, they're just kind of struggling through and nobody wants to help those people because they don't have the money.
Right.
But how do they get that help?
Right. And how do they become successful if they don't have the tools and resources and help to become successful?
Exactly.
I had a lot of people help me and pour into me, So, yeah.
It takes the people pouring into us
Yeah,
again. Like,
yeah.
the people move us, they change our perceptions, they come along and bring us gifts and their abilities that we can't do or see.
And that struggle of, do I
Yes.
have what it takes? Why
Yes.
would people hire me? Why would they trust me? And that whole, that you hear imposter syndrome, but it was really a lack. I think for me, a lot of it was, I am just me. I'm just me in the world. And how am I equipped to build something? And then my mindset would go to, okay, well, if I can just make enough money to get by, and then you barely make enough money to get by. And now the mindset, it's taken a lot of people pouring in over many, many years and telling me the things that I didn't necessarily believe about myself. You are good at what you do. All those things, right? That we
Yes.
can sit there and go, am I really? And now this is my retirement strategy, right? This is what I'm building so that my husband can join me eventually. And, this is going to be a big thing. It is a big thing, even compared to where I was 3 years ago. So
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
continuing to build.
Yeah.
It's that passion of what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And
And
you get to help the people you design and you want to help.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but, just being open to different, right?
Yeah.
And, because for so long I was like, nope, this is what we do. This is what we do. This is our lane. We're going to stay here. And, the last 3 years, if they've taught me nothing else, it's that you've got to be agile. You've got to be flexible, and you've got to be open to things that maybe you didn't even know existed.
We've got to be open to surrounding ourselves with people, and you found your purpose in building communities, and so I'm sure that's where I want to dive into that, but I want to take this moment to our listeners to listen to this, because that's even just how this podcast even started, was going out and having conversations with people, and people bringing different things into my awareness. I was leaving change, and it was the realization that there are so many people that go at it alone. They don't engage other people. They, I was just having a conversation this morning about like people that are prideful and they don't, they don't ask for help. Or even if they did ask for help, they don't even know necessarily where to even ask for it. And it's those things right there, because we're our own worst enemy.
Yeah.
We get in our own head. Am I worthy? Am I good enough? Like, oh, and then a client doesn't do the things that you're, and then you take that on like that, like, oh, it's because of me, or all the stuff.
Yeah, and it's so much of it is just it's a head game, right? And I don't know about you, but I wasn't taught as a child how to get rid of the head garbage, and I wasn't taught as an adult until pretty much a much bigger adult than like as a young adult. None of that. There wasn't. Part of that should be what kids learn in school.
Yes.
It's because it's we're I think we get really hamstrung by other people's opinions, thoughts, ideas, criticisms, all that junk, and it damages. Let me get all the psychology on you.
No, it does. It holds us back.
Yeah.
Like the one thing, like, it's so crazy because you have kids and you want to like give that to them, that like don't care about what people think kind of thing, and just kind of no matter what you do or say, you can't help them shed that. Like they gotta go through it. It's so weird.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel good when people aren't nice, and but it's learning what you can control and what you can't control, and how you choose to react, right? Yeah.
So, how did you find the people that helped you make those movements?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Because it didn't sound like you really found those people until later in life.
Yeah, it was post divorce. I during my divorce or through my divorce, I was part of a community that I then was no longer part of post divorce, and had to start
a new community,
a new everything,
mm-hmm.
and built from the ground up. And I part of it was out of need. I started a women's networking group for selfish reasons, right? Because I was selling products that women wanted.
Yeah.
And that turned into my women's entrepreneurs group that I still have, that I've had now for 18, 19 years. It's been I guess that started before the divorce. So anyway, but it started with this group of women who then became friends.
Yep.
And then I joined my local chamber of commerce and got involved there, and made a new community of amazing, wonderful people, friends. And then just was out in the world networking and meeting. And I went to every networking thing, and I would not recommend that because it was exhausting and overwhelming, and most of it was a waste of time. But I did meet some amazing people. And then as those people became trusted in my circle, that opens up other people, which opens up other people. And it's just that, it's that, the touch. And even, like when you and I were chatting about Carol Eckerly, who was on your show not long ago, and like, how did you meet Carol? And you're like, I don't remember. Then you went back and like, oh yeah, you introduced us. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's it's kind of like this.
It's an entangled web.
Yes.
It's really crazy. And like I am pretty obsessive about remembering how I got connected to people. And so when we were sitting and dissecting it, I had to go back to emails. Like I had to literally go back and
that's so funny.
and I looked up Carol's name to find our first initial email to see who connected us. It was like one of those things, because like when you're connected to good people, I learned I met this best friend. I had this best friend in my early 20s, and he changed my life. Talking about people that change your life. He just thought differently. He said crazy things. I met him on a sales floor. He was a sales guy, and he was around the same age as me. And he talked about being an entrepreneur and a business owner. And like I was just, I grew up super poor, and like to think about being a business owner, like I just wanted a good job.
Right.
I didn't see that kind of world. He just talked differently, and he had these connections. And the coolest thing about being a friend with him, other than that he's scared the shit out of me and pushed me out of my comfort zone and made me like start living, right, was the people that he connected me to. He just knew everybody, and he was connected to so many people. And some of the best people I knew at that time were people I met from him. And it was like the people that you meet in life that connect you to the best, if they're connecting you to great people, like they're great people, they're connecting you to other great people. It's just, you want to meet great people. If you're listening to this show and you want to change your life and
Yeah.
change the people that you're
Yeah.
hanging around, pay attention to the people that are to those people, because you'll find they're intertwined. And then when you're all of a sudden working with somebody close up and you're in a cabin somewhere and having a conversation, you're like, oh my God, Carol, and oh my God,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're sitting and piecing all the people that we know together.
Yeah.
Of course we do, because we're in that same web with all these incredible, amazing people, and we got to choose that and build that intentionally.
Yeah. And speaking of people that you don't know that we both know, Denise Roberts says, hey. I
Denise,
talked to her this morning.
yes, I love Denise too.
So yeah, but and it's, and it's interesting too when you're talking about, the people, and I think back to where I started and the great folks that I met, but there's been this elevation over the years of, it's almost like, okay, so you meet somebody who you're like, oh, they're above me or whatever, and then the world
Yeah,
happens and life
yes,
changes, and then you
yeah.
find yourself reconnecting, and they're just regular people, and it's interesting. Yeah.
Before we get back at it, a quick shout out for our sponsor, Playbook Builder, powered by AI. This show has always been about giving the resources and the tools to small business owners in order to grow and scale your businesses successfully. And so I'm so excited to partner with a company that does just that. If you've listened and heard any of our guests, you've heard talking about building process, developing and training, building culture, are all such important pieces in order to building a great company. Well, Playbook Builder, powered by AI, has come along and revolutionized the game on how you can do that for your team and people. Whether you're onboarding new people, training and developing, continued training and developing, you're looking to scale your business or eventually sell, or most importantly, you're looking to build a legacy as a visionary. Playbook Builder, powered by AI, is able to solve those problems for you. For me as a consultant, I've been able to plug in, and it's so amazing for what I do for clients. I can now leave a legacy. And so, for example, I'm next week training a new hire for a company, and I've been able to build out the next month of her training program using Playbook Builder, powered by AI. The cool thing about the AI, what does that do? What's the hardest part of building out a process? Taking this step by step and making it easy to learn. What the AI piece does is you can actually type in what process it is, whether you want to onboard, if you want to onboard a new employee, type in onboard a new employee and what type of industry you're in, and the AI will put together a foundation for you to build out your playbook. It is absolutely incredible. But don't take my word for it. Head on over to playbookbuilder.com, and these guys have set it up to where you can take this for a test run with no obligations. Plug in what kind of playbook you want to build. If it's a sales training playbook, for example, plug that in the description. And in the description, you can also put in what kind of industry you're in, and then hit generate, and it will generate a playbook for you. Impress from there, and you can take a 30-day free trial of the playbook system altogether. Because we especially we live in, and you talk about doing all your marketing and you're working on all the social media platforms, you're on the platforms and everybody has, like, they're built up, especially if you're in speaking, coaching, consulting, and that kind of thing, and then you meet them and they have real life challenges. We were
Yeah.
talking about, on here, just all the different things that are going on, and that, as entrepreneurs, life happens, people die, like people get sick, and and I know this is all part of your journey, and that happens, but the world still spins, and,
Yeah.
and life is still going on around that.
Yeah. And you can take a break, but not a very long one. Yeah, I will say though, I had 2 weeks in Hawaii in April, which was the trip of a lifetime kind of a trip. We had friends surrounding us the whole time we were gone, different groups coming in and out. It was amazing, and forever going to be a treasure in my heart for a lot of reasons. But a year ago, I put a line in the sand with my team, and I said, when I go on my honeymoon next April, I don't want to work. And so I spent 10 months figuring out how to put the structures and people and things in place that would allow me to take a 2-week vacation. And I did. And my company is fine.
Yeah.
And in fact, my cell phone broke for 5 days. I had no cell phone. I'd got a new debit card right before we left, and my GoDaddy annual URL renewal thing popped up, and the old card was rejected. So they shut my website down and my email down for a week. I didn't know it. And so finally, I get my phone back, and I had all these texts from a couple of clients. Are you okay? Are you okay? All your emails bouncing back, and we can't get a hold of you.
No website, no email.
But you know what? The world continued to spin, and I came back from that 2 weeks, and I had learned a really big lesson, and that was I don't have to have my entire life be building this company, because other people are capable and can help and free me up to work on the higher level stuff that's up here, but other people can do this, you know? It was a big lesson.
How did you get through that? And there's still pieces where I'm, and we've talked about this,
Yeah.
and this, that's my next hurdle. And I know so many people listening. That's the hurdle that you have to jump.
And that's not my strong suit. Is not delegating. It's not putting together processes, because so much of what I do, it's just the creative brain. You sit down and you write, or you sit down and you do this, or you Google this, and it takes you to here, and that connects the dots, and it's just all in my head. So I am very fortunate to have Stephanie, who is she's been working with me now for I think 5 years. She's amazing, and she's the opposite of me. She's very process oriented, very structured, very check the boxes, make sure this gets done, that gets done, da da da, and so she evens me out.
That's
and then
amazing.
I have a team, and I have a couple other people here in the States that support in different ways, writing and things like that. So that used to be all on me, and now I've got my son Josh is doing some writing, and then another young lady, Allison, who's just a phenomenal writer. Then I have a team in the Philippines that supports not only us, but a lot of our clients for a lot of the admin things. And the woman who owns that company, if she lived here, she'd be our next door neighbor. She is so smart and so good, and has been such a blessing. And and she's giving me a different level. We can collaborate. It's not just, hey, can you guys do this? It's like, hey, what do you think about this? Mm-hmm. Same thing with Stephanie. We want to build this. Where do we do? And so, and you and I met through an EOS journey.
Yeah.
And part of what I can see happening for my company is having Stephanie step into that role as the integrator.
Yeah.
And her kids are both being in school full time next year. And so we're looking at what does that look like then? But it's not easy to I shouldn't say that. Once I figured out that other people were capable.
Yeah.
Because that's part of it too. It's like, well, can anyone do it as well as me? They can do it better. And now with
because they think differently.
Yeah. And with things like AI writing tools.
Yeah.
What a blessing that is, Yeah. Because even Stephanie, she's great graphics, but the writing, she just gets stuck in her head. She's got 2 little kids that are, but she can put ideas in there and push the button and come out with something that all she has to do is finesse. It's amazing.
What's super cool, and I know we talked about this when we had a conversation a month or so ago, but with the AI tools coming out, you have some people that like panic and like, oh my God, we're not gonna have jobs, or oh my God, we're not gonna have companies. And then, there's other people that are like, actually,
yeah, we love it.
when you position it, when you use it as a tool.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I did a webinar for a friend of mine. She's in Northern Virginia, but she's got a community of small business owners, and so I did a webinar for them last week. That was one of the things I touched on. I said I could do a whole hour-long thing on AI tools, because I found one, somebody shared one with me yesterday that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is game changer. Everything is like a game changer, and some of them are kind of creepy, and some of them are really good, and some of them, the jury's still out. But my thing is, anything that's going to make you more efficient, look better, sound better, be better.
Yeah.
For me, I'll use it. And it's not like we're, AI writing everything for clients. We'll get an idea, and then we put it in their voice and in the way they'd say it, and in the context of, what their expertise and experience is. So it's not like, there's no personalization, but
yeah,
just like with everything, there's some great tools.
It speeds it up, and I write content, and it's one of those things of like I want my content to sound like me, and it's even thinking about like
Yeah.
hiring companies and how do you get someone to like do your voice and that whole thing. But when you can plug in like a paragraph into the AI, and it spits out something that
Yeah.
is in a format, but it's in your words.
Yeah, yeah. And the writing tool that we use, actually has, they keep adding voices to it.
Oh
So
my
you
god.
can do witty, you can do, professional, you can do funny, you can do,
Oh
and then you pick it for the platform. Are you going to put it on Twitter? You
yeah.
can put it on Facebook, you can put it on LinkedIn, and it then, spits out all these options. So usually what I'll do is I'll take all three, whatever it spits out, combine them together, and then personalize it. And
Yeah.
but it's like, yeah, the days that you can write and you can sit down and it comes out by yourself, awesome. But there are days, as you're sitting there going, I don't even know. So throw an idea in the AI writer and boom, you got a concept.
It's just like that.
Yeah.
I've taken like, and for my YouTube shorts, I will,
Yeah.
I will, my process. It used to, sometimes, like I said, it boom, I know exactly what it's going to be. You don't have to even think about it. And other times it's like, I will sit and waste too much time trying to think about this clever, witty title or whatever. So I started recording it. In Otter, or recording the in Otter.ai, and then uploading that transcript and into AI and saying create a compelling YouTube short title using the following transcript, boom, and it'll come up with this compelling.
Wow.
It's been like the first one I used was on Belinda
Okay.
Ellsworth,
Okay.
and I posted it. I ended up getting like 2,500 views
Oh
in
my
30 minutes. It was
gosh.
crazy.
Wow. Wow. Make sure you do that for ours.
Yeah, no, I exactly. It's just really cool how you can use it, but it's not like it's taking somebody else's content
Yeah.
or somebody else's words. It took what I put in there and just made it into a headline.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. So
It's just interesting what's possible.
yeah. Yeah. What and how, I just think back, even 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and the technology then. In fact, I sound like such an old person, but I remember the very first time we got email. We had dial-up internet through the local library for free, right?
Yeah.
And I got an email account through Yahoo, and I just remember thinking, what good is this? And now it's like we can't even survive without the phone in the hand, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so funny. I was in the cell phone industry when the camera came out on the phone, and I was like, who wants a shitty camera on the phone? Like, this is stupid. Like, I don't want to take these blurry pictures. No foresight,
Yeah.
no vision, like, could you imagine?
Which is why we're sitting here.
I know. Could you imagine buying a phone without a camera on it now?
Man, my husband bought his phone because of the camera. It was
Because
the
of the
best camera on
camera.
the market, Yeah.
Yeah, you can get a
Yeah.
better camera on
Yeah.
your phone than you can just buying a camera.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
We were at my son's graduation, and mine zoomed in. We were sitting back row, and mine zoomed in, and you can kind of see Zach as a little dot, and Scott zoomed in, and he's like right in his face. I'm like, oh my gosh. But anyway,
It's so cool. So, talking about in like software and everything, like you're talking about the your DIY program. Like, how are you building that out?
oh yeah. So this has been one of those things that's just been in my head and on my heart for about a year and a half. Is how to help the people that really need some help,
Yeah.
and they either, like I self-taught, and I know you are too. You figure out, you look. I looked for 2 years for a stupid CRM that kind of met our needs,
Yep.
and because it took a long time, but I found one that is perfect. And you find the AI writing tools, and you find all the everything
for trial and error.
everything you do, and but when you look at the amount of time that
Yes.
it takes to do that, and the amount of frustration and the amount of wasted dollars, because there were ones that are like, yeah, I'll pay for it, and then you're like, yeah, I really don't like this, and now I've wasted all my time and the money, and I put everything in there, and now I've got to redo it somewhere else, all that stuff.
All of it.
So being able to share the knowledge pieces, and not just my knowledge, but like we were talking about, there are so many people that are so good at what they do, that do want to help. And so this DIY piece, so we're going to launch it as, do you need some graphics that are branded for you, right? So we can do your colors, we can do your, we can write your content, we can write some stuff, and then we'll teach you how to how to mix it up on your own, using Canva or using AI writers or whatever. Do you need a structure? Do you need a brand kit? Just those things that are simple and basic.
Just giving them their start, essentially.
Yeah. But then growing that into my grand vision for this is to have it be a community where folks can gather a couple times a month with each other virtually. And part of that is, ask the expert sessions, or have somebody come in to do training on how to do TikTok, or, how to write email for sales, and, all the stuff that people need. And then eventually I can see using something like Playbook Builder and building that into courses, where this cracks me up because I'm just making fun of myself, but you can become ACE certified. Who cares, right? But I can give somebody a
but people do it. Yeah.
You'll be ACE certified and whatever, So that's the grand vision. But yeah.
That is so cool, because it is in your purpose being the community.
Yeah.
It ties back into building those communities.
And then having folks, not only be part of the community to learn, but part of the community to one of the things that started that I started during COVID, right at the beginning when Michigan first shut down. I was talking to Mike Grewley, who's an EOS guy in Northville.
Yep.
And he's one of my dear friends. He was one of the guys that married my husband and I last summer. And, we were talking with him and a couple other folks, and just a conversation, how do we help our clients? And that was when we were getting 900, 3,000 page emails a day that were in legalese that, everyone's like, this, I don't even know what this says. What's a PPP loan? What?
Oh my God, those emails.
All that stuff. And so I started a weekly thing called Friday Forum, and we had attorneys, and we had the people in our world that could pour in. And so we'd do something that was a little bit hang in there-ish, and then we'd do something that was usually finance money based, and then something that was more of a whether it was a COVID update or a business tip, something, and did that every week for about 6 months. And then end of that first summer, like, well, maybe we're through COVID and we don't really need to do Friday Forum. And what I didn't realize is we had built a community
of people.
And everybody had a fit. You cannot stop Friday Forum. And I'm like, well, it's a lot of work finding, and I was having 3 people every week come on, and it was a lot.
Every week.
And so then I dropped it to twice a month. And then now we're do it monthly, and I have 1 to 2 people speak. So that's a little bit more in depth, but it's a community. And what has happened with this community is folks are doing business with each other outside of Fridays.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I didn't realize that. I just thought it was we're getting together, we're learning stuff. People that I have on are really cool.
It's going to happen organically.
Yeah. And so that's kind of my vision with this DIY group is not only can they learn and get equipped and have the tools and resources and support that they need, but they can have each other outside of the knowledge base.
That's amazing. That's like, you think about some forced networking group, where you go in and you don't necessarily trust everybody in the group or whatever, where you're going to this and you get to know people. Like, it's because you're almost not going there to network. You're going there to learn, and then you just grow this organic community where you trust people.
Yeah, and the focus is not, it's because when you think about networking too, and you've done a lot of that, I've done a lot of it over the years. Most of the time, folks, especially if they're not skilled or don't have a knowledge on how to do it, it's the card thrusters, right? They're walking in thinking, you could be in the middle of a conversation.
Boom! Yeah. That's when I got the thrusting, I got the visual.
And their expectation is, I'm going to walk in and 16 people are going to buy my product or service. Well, it's not.
It just doesn't happen that way.
This is the trust building, right? Yeah.
Heather, I had a conversation yesterday. I had a meeting, and this guy's listening good because I gave him this feedback at the end of it. It was the most face-melting conversation I've ever had in my life. It was an hour and a half. I didn't know somebody could talk about themselves for an hour and a half without taking a breath and without regarding that there's another person sitting across from you and they might have something that you might want to ask them a question or something. It was intense. It was intense. And then at some point I fell asleep and like, so like, and I was like, I didn't even fall asleep, but I was just kind of messing with them at a certain point. I was like this, I like, like this. And I like stretch. And like, at one point I was like, man, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And like, just like, it was like one of those things.
Oh my gosh.
But man, there's those people, and at the end of it, like as I was like in my days, it ended with a sales pitch. It ended with a sales pitch, and then the cherry on top was, I think I'd be a great guest on your podcast.
Oh,
and so if you're listening,
gosh.
I hope you're listening. Like, guys, man, like you gotta, like, you can't thrust your shit at people and like think that they're gonna buy from you. I know tons of other people in your industry. You know, like
who have spent the time and effort to get to know you as a person.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Versus, I had a conversation, and I'm gonna shout out Jennifer right now. The conversation this morning, you know, like just a very giving person, like, you know, asked tons of questions. She had connected me with 3 people before we even had a meeting.
Wow.
You know, like, you know, it's just different. Jennifer McGovern, like, shout out.
I know her. Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna say, I think.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't even like as I was talking to her, and she was talking about she was doing like women's group. I was like, I wonder if I was gonna ask her if she, and then we ended up talking about something different.
Okay, I'll have to circle back because she was somebody I met during COVID. I'm pretty sure, but I
That's
remember.
amazing.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah.
I was wondering because she worked with UTech in Ann Arbor.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. So yeah.
That's
so anyways,
funny. Yeah.
so small world,
Yes.
but I had to give her a shout out because it's just a different level. How do you want to network and connect with people? Like, know that there's another person across from you, you know, like connect with them. Like, you have to grow relationships. It's not just hit with our card.
Hey, Jason, did you want to hire me?
I don't know you.
Jason,
You know?
Jason, can I be on your podcast? Jason.
And I said at the end is like, you know, you wouldn't be a good guest because the people that are on the show, they have one thing in common. They're usually curious about other people, you know, like, and you have not displayed that you fit that.
Good for you, you know.
Like, I can't know.
Did he, how did that, was there a response or was it?
Yeah. He acknowledged that he's a talker and then, it's funny if he's listening. He said he doesn't have very many long-term friends, but he's a hell of a wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Like, if the life of a party went for one night, you know, like okay.
All right,
like,
then.
That's great.
Well, you know what?
Good guy.
Yeah,
I just couldn't do another meeting with him ever again. I was like, my face was melting. I was like,
I'm sorry,
I don't know how he's not noticing the expressions on my face. I'm not someone that like I can control my emotions.
Well, and this was kind of a give.
This is a gift. I literally was like this. We were at a restaurant. The waitress came by and was like, "Are you okay?
Can I have another bourbon?"
She's like, "Are you?"
Oh my gosh! Oh, that's hilarious.
Man.
Oh yeah.
There's no way he's listening because he's talking somewhere. There's no way he's stopping and listening to any kind of conversation.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
I told my wife, I was like, I put a quarter in him. And he just like didn't stop. It was like a.
Yeah, you should have started the dinging like at the car wash, right? Ding, ding. Oh, here, let me feed you again. If I stop feeding, will you stop talking?
So, sorry to hijack the show. Is one of those things, like, because we were talking about it, it's a very good graphic between 2 different types of people.
Yeah.
Someone that I'm going to, like, shout out and say, you need to
Yeah.
meet this person, versus someone that I, like, texted somebody because he mentioned him in the conversation. I was like, do you know this person? Do not invite him to any of your groups. I, like, literally was like, it's like, he must have did something if you're texting me something like this. And I'm like, just don't do it.
Well, then, you know, you've got real friends who are looking out for you. So,
like, don't, you know, like, you don't want that. You don't want that.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh. Oh, man.
Anyways, the card thrusting.
Yes, the card thrusting. So, yeah, those are my favorites, especially if you're mid-conversation and somebody just, hey, da-da-da, and they'll, yeah, da-da-da, right into the garbage can. Thank you. But, yeah.
It takes the one-on-one conversations, you know, because even like, you know, even we work together for a year and we get to know each other, but then it takes an even more in-depth conversation to get to the human side, right?
Yeah, because work is work.
Yeah.
And you're in meetings and you're doing what needs to get done and you have those professional conversations and you like each other fine.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it was that night. Everybody else was in bed and we were just kicking back, sipping a couple cocktails and it just got chatting. And yeah, it was a game changer.
It's the game changer because it's human,
Yeah.
right? Because you can get bogged down in the work, and even like I'll admit, you came in today and you're like, "How are things going?" And I jumped right into work and like downloading you with work, and then I'm like, "How about you?" And it got really human really
Yeah.
quickly,
Yeah.
and it was like I felt like stupid, like talking about work stuff and like life's going on.
Yeah. But if, 2 weeks ago, it would have all been about work. But
True.
when life happens and, those things that absolutely cut you to the core and take your breath away happen that you're not expecting, it helped me put things in perspective. I was telling you, I one of my big lessons over these last couple weeks is appreciate people every day and let them know that, because you don't know when you don't have that opportunity. And so that is an intentional forward for me. And yeah, because I regret not doing that with a friend who died. And yeah.
My stepbrother died a couple years ago, and I gave his. I was asked to give the speech at the funeral, right?
My
And it's like
gosh. Oh,
I can totally resonate with what you're saying, because I'm standing up there and saying the things that, like, man, I wish I would have been able. I just wish I would. He didn't know. I
yeah.
wish he would have known how much I respected him and looked up to
Yeah.
him. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And this friend, she just was the heart and soul of so many people. And I told her husband over the weekend, we've been spending a lot of time with him, because they're two of our four best friends, and just I said I never went cruising in her car with her, because she'd always ask me last minute. I always had something going on, and I'm never going to have a chance to do that. And just, she would just text, and her texts were crazy, and they didn't make sense most of the time because she was moving so fast. And I said, I'm going to miss the text where you're going, what the hell does this even say? Can you decipher this? And you'd have to call her. She's like, oh, it wasn't for you. And you're like, oh my gosh. But, most of all, I'm just going to miss just the light that she just brought into the world. And I never thought we would be here and that I wouldn't have her. And I don't think I know. I took her for granted, and I don't want to do that to people anymore.
It's so easy to do because we think we're going to wake up and there's a tomorrow.
Yeah.
You think that there's the text today that can you go riding
Yeah.
with
Right.
me in the car?
Right. Or you want to meet for wine. And all the times, I would drive her crazy. She would drive me crazy, but we loved each other fiercely. And it's just, I haven't really been through anything like this as a grown up. I had one good friend die several years ago of cancer, but this was an unexpected, just one of those jolts where you're going,
Through cancer, you get a grieving process.
yeah, exactly. And I got the call Friday morning a couple weeks ago, and it was a friend who was with her husband, and he said, she didn't make it. I'm like, what do you mean she didn't make it? Make what? It was because I knew that they had taken her to the ER, and it just shattered life.
Mm-hmm. We talked about that as being an entrepreneur, and you're going through a loss, and like the calls still come, and the business is still there, and the employees are still there, and it's like getting through that and navigating and still living in life, but it's still important to be there for a husband, like be for your friend, like be able to grieve for yourself.
Yeah. And last week, I was out of the office almost the whole week for that, and then personal reasons, but rescheduled meetings, and I worked 2 days, and everybody was very kind and gracious. But then, we had the long weekend, and then yesterday hit, and okay, back at it. Everyone's like, oh, how you doing? I'm not doing great. Okay, well, let's, because like I said, the world continues to spin, and lots of people go through these horrible things, and the world continues to spin, and somehow you move on to the next day. But man, it's hard sometimes, and you just want to just not, but the world continues to spin.
The world continues to spin, and it goes back to like the overarching thing we've had throughout this conversation is the community,
Yeah.
because you can't get through that alone. You know, there's a certain point where you have to go through it alone, where there's not going to be people around, but there's also the people that help you get through something like this. And
I'm so glad you said that because it was interesting. I was at the funeral. It was Wednesday last week, so a week ago, and this, my friend was a business owner, very well known in Plymouth, poured into thousands of people throughout her career, and she was a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and we had our friend group, and she had her patients and her staff, and I was looking around the room, and I said, okay, we need to get some tables for our group, our chamber group, and so we can all sit together at the luncheon, and everybody was doing that, and I saw 6 absolutely independent communities where she was the center of it. And I've been thinking about that and what a legacy that is. And then I got thinking about that in my own life. I've got my family who's been pouring into me because they loved her too. And, the friend group, the chamber group. And then last night I was with a lot of my girlfriends. We do a monthly thing called Women in Wine. Again, another community.
yep,
We give back to charity, we drink wine, and we're friends, And those
3 great
yeah, I
things.
know.
Okay.
It's not a bad night every month, but those women were pouring into me, and just and I think if we look at ourselves as the center of our world, what are all those communities, and how do they, because they pour into us when we need it, but then we pour into them when they need it, and it's just amazing. It's amazing, the people that are in our lives, that I'm looking at things very differently than I ever have before, which is a good thing.
It's a really clear lens, and it's a very beautiful way to look at it, because so many people go to their death not seeing that. And how many times have we said, oh, I wish grandma could have seen the people that turned out and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or I wish I would have been able to tell her those things that I said at the funeral, in real life. How many times does that happen? Like, we don't truly tell the people because we think we have more time,
Right.
so to be able to yeah.
Yeah.
To
Didn't mean to be a downer, but
no, it's
You know.
good stuff, because it's important to, one, the really good message is not to take people for granted, to call your loved ones, to take that ride, to do those things, because you're gonna have regrets, right?
yeah.
But the other thing is pouring into that community, and I love what you just said too, is taking a moment and being grateful and starting to think about what am I grateful for in my life, and those communities and the people that pour back into you,
And tell them that.
and tell them that.
Yeah. Because I can think it all day long. But last night I stayed late, and 2 of my dear sweet friends, I was gonna go, and they're like, no, just stay, have another glass of wine, and we just were together, and they knew. I mean, they knew the same friend, and but they knew how hard it impacted I've been, but not trying, still trying to
Be normal,
and to
whatever.
help other people, and all of that. But we just were together, and I'm going to call both of them today and just say I really appreciated the opportunity to just be with you guys last night. Because normally I would just, I might shoot him a text or thanks for last night, but that needs to be said.
It needs to be said.
Yeah,
Yep, that's so awesome.
yeah,
That's so awesome. It's because the other thing is like, well, one, they are going through it too, right? But when a lot of times people don't know how they impacted us,
yeah,
and they could be really going through a personal struggle themselves.
Yeah.
You talked about having your business and not whether you're worthy, or going through this like imposter syndrome that we all go through, and then all of a sudden somebody calls you. I did this thing a few years ago. I called it the Tuesday Tude, where I just like put a video out every Tuesday.
Oh,
It'd be like a video of
nice.
gratitude.
Yeah.
And like, I wish I would. It's like one of those things I got to bring back because it was super cool. So it was like this whole, like, I want to do this movement. If I'd go out and somebody say, like, shout out somebody that I was grateful for in my life, and other people then do the same thing. And it took off for a little bit. So it was really cool. But the first one I did was with a manager that I had that kind of changed my sales career and made me want to be a leader. And just the way she built a culture and built a family within the team, like, really impacted me. And I made this video and I put it out there and I tagged her in, and she called me, and she was going through a really hard time at the time. And she was like, I didn't realize exactly how I impact. You know, so it's like you
Yeah.
have no idea how you hit, and like you have no idea what they're going through and what that can do for them.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's yeah. And DeBron, who I connected you with a while ago, who does the Happy podcast, the Happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. They started just by interviewing people on the street. Why are you happy? What makes you happy? And they've interviewed thousands of people over, the year and a half they've been doing this. And I'm like, what a foundation to start a company happy, and making
Yeah.
people think about that. Again, intentionality, right? Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Cool stuff.
it's cool stuff. It's cool stuff. So you mentioned a couple of things. You talked about like some of your events, like Fempreneur. I know this last one. Right after the day after the event, I ran into so many women that were just jazzed up about what they had just experienced.
Yeah, yeah. And every year, I think we cannot. There's no way we can ever top this year. And then the next year, I don't know that topping. It's not like a competition.
This is an empowerment
but
for women
it is,
entrepreneurs.
and it started as more of a nuts and bolts. These are the things you need to do to be, to run a business, to own a successful business. It's the marketing, it's this, it's that. And over the years, we've come to embrace the fact that women have different challenges than men. Not good, bad, or otherwise. It's just different.
Yep.
Many women they've got kids or they've got other responsibilities, or the sandwich generation, taking care of parents. Not that men don't do those things.
But it is more typically, yeah.
Right, because we got people like, so this is not a man bashing thing,
No, I get it.
But we've decided over the last few years that we've incorporated more of the journey pieces of it. So yes, there are tactical tools, tricks, tips, things that you can take away, but there's also pieces of the journey that are at least as important, in the whole work-life balance thing. There is no balance, but how do you juggle some of that? And we had one of our speakers, Jocelyn Gingrande, who she was with us right at the beginning, and we kind of lost touch for a few years. She came in this year and did a diversity, equity, and inclusion. She took an 8-hour workshop and condensed it into about a 45-minute presentation, and we'd never done anything like that before, and it was extremely powerful. But it made, there were some people that were a little bristly because, I'm not. It's not accusatory. It's just sharing, things that we aren't necessarily aware of, and so this over the years, it's shifted and changed, and it felt like this year we had a great combination of the people side, the business side, and the just some of those other things like the DEI stuff that is important because we all tend to gravitate toward people like us.
Yeah.
And so if you're dealing with someone who isn't exactly like you or very similar to you, not even being aware of like age, right? You're talking with someone who's a senior and you crack a joke about walkers and wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Not, and that's not a great example, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be.
Look at that old person.
Or
look at the wheels on that walker.
I want those spinners on my walker, right?
I would be legit like, whoa, look at those spinners.
I want one to light up. But so this next March, we've already decided that we've had a combination of panels and speakers, and we're going to have straight speakers, but have it be interactive with the audience as much as we can. And so it's going to be different. Next year's going to be a lot different just on the structure of it. But we were sold out this year. We had 116 women who were there, and then we stuck a couple extra through the door to tell the fire marshal. But it was really powerful. So that'll be in March, early March next year in Livonia, I think, at Ward Church. We're still getting the details straight. And then I have a women's entrepreneurs group that we do a speed networking once a month online. And then about cool. Every other month we meet in person, just, cocktail happy hour kind of a thing. And, my women in wine group, and I if I have a void in my life, I start a group. That's what I do. I told Denise Roberts that when the first time she and I met, we were doing a training thing, and I said that, and she called me the next day, and I didn't know her, and she's like, "What you said?" I said, "I don't know what I said. I was just making stuff up."
What I say?
She said, "You said if you have a need or you can't find something, that you like, start your own group." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's what I do," And so but that's part of this community, right? I like surrounding myself with people who want to be part of something outside of themselves.
What, like, you talked about that discovery, like, how did you discover that? Just because you like all of a sudden looked around and saw all the communities you built, or
Well, part of it, again, go back to the selfish needs, right?
Yeah.
When I first started my business, I was going to every networking event under the sun.
Uh-huh.
And when I was in direct sales, I would do every vendor show and do everything, and 95% of it
you
was,
talked about earlier, the good ones, the bad ones.
yes,
I've been through them all too.
95% were stupid or useless. Maybe stupid's a little harsh, but zero. It was a bunch of card thrusters or a bunch of this or a bunch of that. And so I started my own group when I was in direct sales. It met in my home once a month, women's group. And that now is this community that I host on Meetup that is there. I think we have 1,700 members, which means there are 30 people that participate, right? It's Meetup. But, but we have this core group of women who, it's about pouring into each other. It's not about, and I say at every meeting, we all have a product or service that we're selling or representing. But if we had to buy from everybody, we'd all be out of business. So that's not what this is. This is about finding those people that can pour into you, that you can pour into. And so whatever we do, every time we do anything, I always, we do your introductions, whatever, but what's your ask? What is one thing this community of women can help support you in it over the course of the next month? It may be just want to shoot some ideas around and I don't have anyone to talk to, or, I just updated my website. Could I get some feedback? Or, I'm offering a free webinar. Do you know anyone who might be wanting some information on XYZ? Instead of, I have a special this month. I need to sell 15 X's, right? No. So I think so much of starting groups for me is this is a long answer to your question, but crafting the culture of the group, because the culture and the expectations that are set are what makes the group what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So anything, your business.
That's obviously in your skill set. How do you do that?
It's selfish. It's what I like.
I know, because you think
right?
about all those people, even the 30 are showing up. Yeah. How do you keep them in a culture?
And over the years, we've had the people that didn't.
Yeah.
And they would come, and I remember one. This was probably 5-6 years ago. I had an event at the Rusty Bucket in Northville, and there were 26 people signed up on Monday morning, and by Tuesday morning, 24 hours later, day of the event, we were at 46. So I went to the restaurant and I said, we got 20 add-ons. Here's what happened. And they're like, well, we can't accommodate that. I said, well, you don't have choice because everyone's going to be here in 2 hours. Just like, you guys are going to make your whole week tonight. And they crammed us in, and it was crowded and noisy. And there were 3 women there who every time I went by them, and I kept saying, I'm so grateful the restaurant's doing such a great job, da 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 da. And so that night, there were just 3 of them. Everybody else was wonderful and amazing, and I didn't even eat dinner. I mean, I worked
the whole time.
I'm doing this for free, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I'm making any money off this. It's a free event. That night, I decided to put a $3 surcharge on those events because I knew those 3 women would never come again, and they never did. Everybody else said, because I was asking my core group, I feel really bad doing this, but I just don't need the drama and the hassle. Yep. And they're like, oh my gosh, we think you should charge more than you're charging. There's so much value in these women. It's a lot different post-COVID. People aren't as engaged like they were, but so So anyway,
that's cool. $3. You knew
$3.
$3 would knock them right out.
Yep, and they never came back. And God bless them. But if you hate being somewhere that much, why come?
Go. Why are you coming?
Why come? Right?
You had a choice to
better
to drive
uses
there.
Of your time if you're that miserable.
Exactly.
So.
But you show up and like you're that miserable, and you show up and you find another miserable person, and I'm sure they're out miserable somewhere else right now together.
Maybe they found a miserable group that's all happy together, and that's just not me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, you're staying with the people that pour into you and that you can pour into.
And as you craft that culture in a group like that, people will instantly realize they're not a fit.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's incredible. That's incredible. So, man, Heather, this has been an incredible conversation. I could
do this 6 more hours.
I know, right? I know.
Are you in?
I know, right? Yeah. Isn't it like?
Yeah, it went fast.
I just love sitting down and having these conversations, and I could sit here for a couple hours too.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's part of the nice thing about being in the studio is because when I was doing this DIY, I would go a couple hours. I would be like,
man,
there was a couple episodes. There was like 3.5 hours. It was because I just sit and talk and be engaged, and like I'd look back at the clock and everybody's happy to do 3 hours until they realize there's 3 hours. And then everybody's like, oh my God,
man.
where'd my day go?
Yeah. Wow.
I can't believe I just did that for 3 hours. And then try to upload that content. And
oh my gosh. Oh, and then sort through it all. And yeah.
And I was doing it on a GoPro. So it was like,
oh man, brutal.
Gigs of just content.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
So,
anyways, we all have our meager beginnings, and it comes down to the people. It comes down to the people. And now it's like, come to the studio. It's amazing. Meet Grant.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we have like this joke I always talk about, like Grant's like Robin Givens. I like pull him into the conversation. You're like Howard Stern. Like, this is now the day. Like we're like, like you think about radio shows back in the day. That's what we're doing now.
Right. Yeah.
That's exactly what we're doing. If you ever see me with my head down and my hand up here, I'm not sleeping.
I heard you snoring. That's awesome.
Yeah, but awesome. Heather, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Absolutely.